Hey, everybody, welcome to the Social Distance Show. My name is Ben Barber. I am your host for the show. Thank you for joining us today. I'm very excited to have Keith Cowley on to talk about the Living Sharks Museum, which is in Downtown Westerly. Obviously, I don't think you can go right now, but we'll get into that in a minute. I've been there. We used to be neighbors. The businesses used to be neighbors. It was it's a wonderful place. So I'm excited to talk to him about that. Before we get into that, I just want to make a clarification from yesterday, from Lee Eastbourne. Uh, we had a little bit of a brain freeze online. He did quick math wrong, and I thought that it was very funny, but a $10 donation buys 100 pounds of food, not 1,000 pounds of food, but 100 pounds, which is still amazing. So the Johnny Cake Center just wanted me to clear that up. Your $10 donation buys 100 pounds of food, which is incredible. It's incredible. They're an incredible organization, and financial donations are the most effective way to help your community right now through the Johnny Cake Center. So johnnycake.org. A $10 donation buys 100 pounds of food for people in need in this community. All right, so now let me bring on my guest, Keith Cowley from the Living Sharks Museum. Keith, how are you, man?
Good. How are you, Ben?
I'm wonderful. It's good to see you.
You
And so today we're talking. I mean, there's so many things. You're an author, a graphic designer. I mean, a singer songwriter. What don't you do, man? But today we're talking about the Living Sharks Museum. How long have you been doing this, and how long have you had the museum?
Well, there's a few different ways I can answer that question. The museum's actually only been around for just over a year. I suppose last September was a year, so pretty excited to be able to say that we've been open to the public for that long. This has been in my mind for quite a long time. I always thought I'd put myself in a position like this. I just didn't know I would be the one with the museum. I've been carting around a lot of fossil material from just years and years of collecting, digging up prehistoric sharks all over the country, especially the East Coast, though, very rich in shark history. So between that fossil material and the giant cases that, like an idiot, I had been like carting around from place to place, I eventually stripped them down into a lighter material and put wheels on them. So,
Oh, that's good.
we evolved a little bit over time. But yeah, it was just a matter of time that I was going to set that material up and allow the public to see it. And the museum concept started with prehistoric shark material, but that also quickly evolved.
So it's called the Living Shark Museum, Living Sharks Museum, livingsharks.org. Why the emphasis on, so you've had a lot of fossils, and prehistoric, sharks. Why the emphasis on living sharks, as compared to the museum being the prehistoric skeletons and fossils that you have?
Well, I think there's more of a need now to draw attention to living sharks because sharks are unfortunately being overfished all over the world. And so we're trying to do what we can do to raise awareness about that. But as I mentioned, the collection did evolve, and I started filling in the gaps of shark history beyond the fossil material. And I didn't realize how deep shark history really went. When you try to understand the shark and what it's been through, most people think of Jaws when they think of sharks. They think of a giant shark and shark teeth, and I don't want to go swimming, and all this fear around sharks. But and it's actually that fear which has convoluted the history of the shark in a lot of ways, and unfortunately oppressed the potential future of the shark. So changing those perspectives with the general public, especially after Jaws, has been kind of our main goal here.
So you do a lot of work with the with scientists, well, what is the name of the group? It's the Oshi. I can't remember it. I'm just going to ask
Are
you.
you,
That's
oh,
way
okay.
more
You're
appropriate.
thinking of OSearch, yeah,
Oh,
and
search, yeah.
that's a recent. We're working on a partnership together, and yeah, any opportunity I can get to get closer to sharks has been my goal. I want to get all the opportunities to be firsthand and see what the life of the shark is like and what the human interaction with sharks is. And the goal of the museum is to provide that experience firsthand through me as an educator, but from an unbiased perspective. So someone who doesn't know much about sharks and what they're going through now can get the perspective from both sides. So OSearch is actually a shark tagging organization. And I had the opportunity last year to go on their vessel on their research trip off in Nantucket. And I was present for the tagging of Ack, who was the 12-foot female great white shark, named after the people of Nantucket. Not after Mars attacks. And that was an amazing experience. Actually, it was more interesting, a personal experience, because it didn't go the way that they planned. OSearch, if you go to osearch.org and take a look at their operation there, they have a decommissioned Alaskan crabber that they use to seek out the great white shark. And it's been retrofitted with a lift, which used to transport boats back and forth up and down the coast, but now actually removes great white sharks from the water to give scientists complete 100% access to the shark. It's an amazing operation. And in that process, they go through a lot of different tests to better understand the life history of the shark. So blood samples, they're looking at bacteria, they're looking for parasites, they're getting fecal samples, they're finding microplastics in the fecal samples. They're do ultrasounds on the females, and they get whatever data they can. They're serving many institutions around the country with that data. But while that shark is on the lift, ultimately their goal is to tag it. And they'll use a tag like this one. This is a spot tag. And they apply that to the dorsal fin of the shark. And what that does is enable them to get real-time data on that shark for up to 5 years. And we can see where that shark goes actually anywhere in the world. And you can see this on their website too, but live data all the time. If that shark surfaces, it sends a signal to the satellite, and that satellite beams it back down to us. So in real time, we know where that shark is. And over 5 years, that's really important information.
What sort of things have been learned from tagging of the sharks?
Well,
I assume a ridiculous amount of information, and that's an
a lot
unfair
of
question.
there's been a lot of scientists studying the life history of the shark, specifically over the past 50 years. Because before that, we didn't know much about the sharks beyond their basic biology. There were a lot of theories in scientific circles, but we didn't really have the technology yet to answer some of those questions. So OSearch is one of many organizations out there doing it. They just happen to have the biggest boat, and they have a lift so they can bring the shark out of the water. Most people are tagging sharks boat side. So they're hanging over the side of a boat with a 12 to 16 foot great white right there within hand's distance, and trying to put a tag on its fin. And maybe take a blood sample if you're lucky, if the shark's not thrashing around. But so it's actually, I shouldn't say that. I don't mean it that way, because
Right.
these other organizations are still getting a tremendous amount of data. What they'll actually do to get the data that OSearch is able to get much more easily is they actually have to. Yes, I have a stuffed shark.
I have a stuffed beluga like 3 feet away from me. So.
Oh, well, you better keep it away. So, in order to get the kind of data that they need from the sharks, they usually try to roll them over. and they put them into a state called tonic immobility. And that gives them complete access to the shark in the water. So they can still get an ultrasound, they can still get fecal samples or any of the samples that they want to get, as long as that shark remains in that tonic state. Once they roll them back over, they're ready to go.
So, what can people see when they come to the Living Shark Museum? Obviously, right now, I assume that they cannot come see the Living Shark Museum. Is that accurate?
Yeah, unfortunately, due to the current pandemic, well, we are closed to the public. So that's why we've been doing as much outreach as we can. We're doing a lot of programming through these same kinds of technologies. But if you were to come to the museum and explore our collection, the museum is currently in a very small space. Eventually, we're looking to get out onto the street into a bigger space and spread the collection out. But don't let it fool you. I have a ridiculous amount of material in this museum, and I'm covering so many aspects of shark history. So yes, it begins from prehistory, from the days of prehistoric sharks, and I talk about their relationships with the sharks that still live today, the living sharks. And then from there, I walk our way around through shark attack history, which starts in 1916 for our conversation, or conversational purposes. It's really the first time a shark attack was reported nationally. That was sort of a pandemic on its own, because in 1916, there were 5 shark attacks within a week along the same coastline in New Jersey.
Oh, wow.
And so that put sharks on the fear factor map for people. And that's where these feelings sort of began. We've been trying to change that perspective over time. See, back then in 1916, we really didn't know anything about sharks. So they assumed that it was one shark that was just swimming up and down looking for somebody to chew on.
Just one serial killer shark.
Just one serial killer shark. And that just the rogue shark that Hooper talks about in Jaws, and he thinks territoriality and all this, and it's great for the Jaws film, but it's not reality. In fact, now with new technology, people with drones and cameras out the side of the airplane, like our last guest Wayne Davis in the fighting chair, we're able to get these aerial visuals, and we know that there's massive shark migrations up and down our coast that we never really would have known about if we didn't get that footage.
So you just talked about your show.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that and some of the outreach that you're doing while people can't come into the museum.
Sure, of course. For a long time, I've wanted to do this series called In the Fighting Chair. Initially, it was a thought where, since we're an unbiased museum, being a history museum, a shark history museum, I wanted a platform, or a soapbox, I guess you could say, for all the different perspectives of shark history, shark awareness, shark conservation topics could come and be discussed. And now, of course, we can't do that in the museum itself right now. So I utilize this new technology here. I believe we call it live streaming.
Yes.
And yes, so we're using that now. And we started the show this past week. It's called In the Fighting Chair. And our first guest was Wayne Davis, who is a spotter pilot spotting sharks for the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy in Cape Cod. Of course, we know there's a lot of white sharks in Cape Cod right now, so he's typically very busy during the summer months finding sharks and leading scientists to the sharks so that they can tag them and get whatever data they can. They've been working on a population study for the past 5 years, and now another 5 years. And Dr. Greg Skomel, who headed up that research, he's managed to tag over 230 individual white sharks in Cape Cod. There's a lot of white sharks. And a lot of it has to do with the seal population that's rebound. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. I've got Dr. Greg Skomel on In the Fighting Chair on the 6th, on Monday at 1 p.m. Facebook Live on our page, Living Sharks Museum. And so we'll be talking a little bit about what's going on in Cape Cod and what all the sharks are doing and what all the seals are doing and what bathers this summer need to think about.
And and how often is the show? Is it going to be every Monday?
Right now, just because I have some time on my hands, I'm doing it twice a week.
Okay.
So actually, this Friday we're having another one, and it's William McKeever, who I actually had in town a couple of months ago. He wrote a book called Emperors of the Deep, and a lot like me, he decided to go out and get his own answers about sharks. He had experienced a shark tournament, which are still happening around the country and in other countries as well, where people are fishing for sharks for sport, for trophy prizes. And this disgusted him, as you could imagine. I'm not particularly fond of shark tournaments myself, and I've monitored quite a few over the years in my involvement in the scientific community. So he wrote about his experience trying to get to the bottom of what's really going on with sharks. And he went in and got friendly with Greenpeace and learned about how sharks are being exploited in the world's oceans. And he met with folks from Research, and he met with Greg Skolmel, and he got a lot of his own answers. So he's got some great stories to tell. The book itself is awesome, but he's working on, it's actually done, I believe, at this point. He's going to screen it in April, but a full-length, feature-length documentary on his experience. We're going to show some clips from that during our broadcast of In the Fighting Chair, again on Friday, the 3rd at 1 p.m.
That's amazing. I want to get into a couple more topics before we let you go. We have a couple comments. Jay said, "Hello, Ben. Hello, neighbor Keith." Hey, Jay. Like I said, Keith, you and I used to be neighbors. Jay took over my old office and now has since moved to another office across the hall. And then Ashley says, "This is making my day all the way from Arizona. So happy to see longtime friends. One serial killer shark, laughing. My first and only stuffed animal was a tiger shark named Sharky. Thank you so much. Looking forward to the Atlantic." Thank you very much, Ashley. She also said that you need to set up a second museum on Block Island.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping to do some work on Block Island this year. Block Island actually now has its own Marine Institute. It's a tiny little building on the shore. And they have recently upgraded their outdoor aquarium, which is really cool because they just initially started out with touch tanks with some dogfish or whatever some of the fishermen might have brought in, or the research boat. So hopefully we'll do some programming with them this summer. I'm looking forward to that.
Speaking of programming, you and I had a conversation about a week or two before all of this pandemic stuff happened about bringing artifacts and going into schools. So I know that you've done a little bit of that. Can you tell us about for the future, maybe for the fall, what it's like when you go into schools? How do I find Keith's broadcast on Friday? How can people find your broadcast one more time? It's the Living Sharks.
Living Sharks Museum on Facebook. It will be a Facebook Live broadcast because we'll be streaming through this same streaming site, and it feeds onto Facebook. So Living Sharks Museum. And awesome. If you do miss it live, you'll have the opportunity to watch it again later because we're uploading it to we have a YouTube account now for Living Sharks Museum playlist with all the In the Fighting Chair shows.
Let me talk to you about that after. You can do this. I know that you use the same system that I'm using right now. Yes. You can do this on YouTube and Facebook at the same time.
Yes.
So if you okay, also so schools, the education program, what is that experience like when you go into schools with the Living Sharks?
Well, it's obviously different for all ages, but I have a lot of different aspects of the shark experience that I can bring, I guess. I've done a few classes before this pandemic, which were a lot of fun. Again, they were all ages, but the museum is currently funded by the little bit of merch we have and programming. So I'm looking forward to doing a lot of school groups. I know a lot of schools can't get out into the field or do a a lot of school trips places because it is very expensive to do that. So it's a very inexpensive alternative to have someone like myself come into your classroom or into your school system and talk about sharks. Sharks are a hot button right now, obviously. They're getting a lot of press. But I can speak on sharks from the modern perspective, from their biology. We can work in STEM lessons. I'm an OSearch education ambassador, so I have the ability to teach their STEM lessons, which you can actually find on their website, osearch.org. They've got a whole set of curriculum right now that you can utilize. And if you're teaching at home, like most of you I'm sure are right now, you can bring some of those lessons into your home lessons.
Speaking of that, just made me think about it. I know that you're doing a lot of live streaming right now. I watched for kids, and especially for students, and I mean the kids can't even go into the classroom right now, which is so a lot of places have been doing virtual field trips. I personally last Thursday watched about 45 minutes of preschool class explanation of frogs, and it was very interesting. And the kids got to ask questions, and the parents typed it into Facebook, and it was really great. I think I would love to see that and to see you sort of show around artifacts and stuff, and maybe we can get you hooked up with some schools that would encourage the parents to tune in.
Be great.
Yeah, that might be fun. Do sharks benefit the ecosystem? Ashley wants to know.
Absolutely.
How could they not?
So not all apex predators are sharks, or I should say not all sharks are apex predators. That would be the more correct way to say that. But a lot of your highly migratory sharks, they are apex predators, meaning they're the top of the food chain. The only other top tier predator out there that gives them any run for their money, of course, is the orca. But yes, sharks are very necessary in the ecosystem. They maintain balance. They're part of a trophic cascade. You know, they have the ability to feed on the weak and the dying and the dead. And all those little scraps that they miss, you know, end up at the seafloor. So it works its way all the way through the food pyramid.
Before I let you go, I see all the stuff behind you. Can you show us some stuff?
Sure, I'd love to show you some things.
Thank you very much.
So, I mean, I'm just a huge fan of sharks. And of course, I have a nice collection of biological samples in the museum. So we have quite a few species of modern sharks represented through their jaws, through their teeth. I have a comparative collection of modern sharks' teeth. So if you're a youngster or an adult very interested in comparing prehistoric sharks' teeth or modern sharks' teeth, we've got a very large collection here that you can look through. But I have a lot of local species of sharks to give folks a better idea of what species are in our waters. But the other thing I can show you is, well, maybe some of you might recognize this, Narragansett beer can. This is the can that Quint in Jaws crushes. And that's a Rhode Island piece of shark history. That's another conversation that we're having because, of course, shark history also involves film and media. Sharks have been given a bad rap through the media, so we do highlight that and talk about that. You see some film memorabilia behind me. I never know which way to turn. This way, I guess, and point back that way.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of Jaws film memorabilia, and then of course other shark documentaries that were really, really popular during that time, like Blue Water White Death, if you've ever gotten the chance to watch that. It's an amazing documentary, maybe one of the last adventure documentaries out there. Back during a time where, again, we didn't know much about sharks. So you put a bunch of shark enthusiasts and shark scientists and shark photographers on a boat who've never really photographed a shark before, except for two of the members. And then you go following a whaling vessel thinking you're going to find a great white shark, and you don't. So some harsh lessons on a very unseasoned science team. Really great documentary. You may actually be able to find that on YouTube, but we like to talk about that here. Another thing we talk about here is shark fishing. Shark fishing was not really a popular thing to do over the years until more recently when sharks started to be consumed. But before that, people were just catching sharks for trophies. And Quint from Jaws is actually based on a real guy. His name was Frank Mundus. And he was from Montauk, and he's famous for catching the largest fish by rod and reel, which was almost a 3,500-pound fish, and it was a great white shark. For a little bit of local history, though, before Frank got the title of having caught the largest fish by rod and reel, another gentleman had done it back in 1959. I don't know if you can see this very well, but this is a massive shark hanging. I'm going to put it right there, of course. Hey, now you can see my little fancy light. Very, very large shark here. A gentleman by the name of Alf Dean had caught this shark for the sole purpose of trophy and trophy cash. And he caught that shark in Australia. Well, a lot of folks don't know that ashaway line and twine, which is in our town, or next to our town, Ashaway, still in operation today, but they actually used to make fishing line. And Alf Dean, who had never used ashaway line before in his life, caught that shark in Australia on line that was made right here in Ashaway. Really cool tidbit of shark history that is actually local. And I confirmed that, of course, with an ad I found for ashaway line and twine, where they boasted that catch because they needed that marketing. There's Alf Dean with his record catch and ashaway line and twine.
That's awesome. That's really cool. There's a lot of great stuff in there. Obviously, there's enough stuff to fill a much larger space than you currently have. So I'm excited for watching this grow. Because I got to see, as we mentioned with Jay earlier, that you and I used to be neighbors in the building, and I got to see a lot of your stuff before it was a museum, which was really nice. And it's always fun to listen to you talk about this because you're so passionate about it and you're so knowledgeable about it, which is really just wonderful. So what is the best way that people can support the Living Sharks Museum right now, since they can't come see it?
Well, it is unfortunate that you can't come see it right now, especially since I have so much free time to be here. But like any small business right now, you can support small business by supporting their social media. Like and follow and comment, follow our stories, follow the lessons we're putting out there, the lesson plans, any programming that we have to offer online. Definitely support it that way. That's a huge way you can support us right now. Just help us get the word out. So when we get out on the other side of this, a lot more people know about us and we can rebound a lot stronger.
I love it. And I can't wait to come see it all set up. And so do you still have the giant cases, or did you get rid of them?
Oh, I've still got them. Yeah.
Okay. You just have smaller ones to transport now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. And it's always really, really awesome talking to you. So 1 p.m. on Friday, in the Fighting Chair on Living Sharks Museum on Facebook. And give that a like and follow everything that Keith does with the Living Sharks, because that's awesome. And everything that he's doing is great. And he's got scientists coming on, and it's a really, really awesome opportunity. and such an intimate setting, especially like you saw several people commented. And so Keith is using basically the exact same setup as what we're doing right now for his show. So they can interact with you if that's what he chooses to do, and he's playing videos of it, and he's really it's a very fun, interactive, informative show, and it's a wonderful thing that you're doing for everybody, and especially for the people that love sharks, and the people that just think only think about sharks during Shark Week. Or when they're watching Jaws, and
every week is Shark Week here.
yes. How do I hook one of those hoodies? How can somebody still buy merch from Living Shark Museum?
I do still have a small amount of merch. We have the Advocate t-shirts available still, which you can find on our website. I have a few left. We're kind of waiting till the end of this pandemic to do a reorder. But with beautiful great white shark art, done by 401H2O, our good friend Jim. Definitely take a look at his artwork as well. But he did a beautiful job for our t-shirts. We don't have a lot of merch yet, but on the other side, we will. This hoodie in particular is an O-Search hoodie done by Southern Tide. And you can find merch like that on their website. That merch actually helps support the majority of their programming and their expeditions. So I'm taking one off their book to help the museum grow.
Also, you do a ton of other stuff. You are, like I said, you're an author, you're a musician, you have the New England Songwriters Invitational, I believe. Is that the correct? Yes. Nessie? Hey, it's Nessie, and that's another prehistoric thing. Not necessarily sharks, but still folklore of the sea. And where can people buy your books right now?
Sure.
Because you have books on more than just you're just a general nature expert, and you have the New Native Foundation, and you've done all of this stuff, and you have these books. So how can people buy that if they've listened to all of this and they're watching the Living Shark thing and they want to support you?
Of course, they're more than welcome to support any of the projects that I'm working on. The majority of what I do involves having an intimate connection with the earth, whether it's with sharks, whether it's the ocean, whether it's being outdoors and being close to the earth in the woodlands, or foraging. I am working on a foraging text right now. New Native Foundation. I have a book called Environmental Connection that I did a few years ago with the Westerly Land Trust, and that book, as well as my book Body as Teacher, are both available locally through the Savoy, and I know they're doing some online orders and such now, so you should be able to get them there, but you can also find them on Amazon.
Not only are they doing online orders, Savoy is doing free delivery right now.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so check that out. And thank you so much, Keith. I want to have you back on at some point to talk about this more, and also check out Keith's show In the Fighting Chair. It's amazing. Keith's amazing. I love this. I love all of this. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Ben.
All right. I'll see you soon. That guy's awesome. He always has been. I love it. Sorry about the weird angle tonight. There's a huge lens there. Keith helped me figure that out a little bit. Because what can you do? We had to move this a little bit earlier tonight. So we had the correction from Lee Eastbourne earlier. Awesome stuff, Ben and Keith. Thank you very much, Jay. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, everybody who's watched this and everybody who will watch this. Please follow Living Sharks Museum on Facebook. Please follow Keith. And check out In the Fighting Chair. It's going to be Friday and Monday this week, and we'll see how that goes going forward. And I just want to thank everybody for watching this show tonight at 8:00. Caswell Cook Show, or not the Caswell Cook Show, Ask Caswell. There was a nice write-up in the Westerly Sun about that today by Dale Faulkner. He said something really, really sweet about me. I'm not sure what it was at the moment, but it was very nice, and thank you very much. And tonight we have Gary Van. I cannot pronounce his last name right now, and I'm really ashamed of that. I think it's Psychok. I'm not sure. But he is a legendary musician. He was in John Lennon's band with Yoko Ono, and he's a really he's a very nice guy. I talked to his wife earlier today, and just a wonderful, wonderful human being and a wonderful musician who's going to be on tonight. Then at 9 p.m., Shane Belanger's show, The Salty Bartender, is going to be on the first episode of that. That is part of Westerly Live's late night programming, which is not safe for work necessarily. It's not going to be awful, but it's on at 9, so don't watch with your kids. And he actually has his brother on. They're both bartenders right now, and they're going to talk about that and being out of work in the restaurant community right now. And he's going to have bartenders on that show every week on Tuesdays at 9. I believe it's Tuesdays at 9 every week. It is this week at least. So tonight, check that out. Ask Caswell and the Salty Bartender, which is really awesome. How do I get notifications? Ashley Hilburn, how do I get notifications? Follow Westerly Live on Facebook. That's what you need to do. Where is it? Follow us. Follow us on Westerly Live on Facebook. That's how you get notifications for this. If you want notifications for Keith's show, Living Sharks Museum on Facebook, follow them. You'll get notifications when they go live. There might be like a little bell or something that you have to ring. Just make sure that you do that. Who else? Done and done. Cool. Thank you very much. I gotta go because we're producing a show with Governor Lincoln Chafee that you can find on Lincoln Chafee's Facebook page at 7:00. So I gotta get out of here. Thank you so much to Keith Cowley. Check out livingsharks.org. Fantastic thing he's doing there. Have a good night, Westerly. We'll see you tomorrow, or if you watch everything on this page, we'll see you in about 20 minutes. Bye.